Thank you, dear panelists. You see why I said that we have a very special group at the end. I know that we have heard so much, and everybody's processing in their minds how much has been said and how can we do better and more in the countries where we come and maybe beyond. But I have that job now to really ask if we can just be on time so that we can finish. As John said, I'm sharing this with John. If we can finish by 5 o'clock, because, or maybe a few more minutes, because unfortunately there are guests with other obligations, and we wouldn't want anyone to miss anything that will be said at this panel. Okay, so let us start with Her Excellency Jovana Trenchevska, and sorry, I need to put my glasses. Minister Trenchevska, after this very intense and interesting day, full of drawings, discussions, real stories, human stories, achievements, challenges, can you tell us what has inspired you to work on gender-responsive family policies? And what will you bring back to your country following this rich discussion today? Please.
Thank you, Afrodita. Please allow me at the beginning to express my gratitude to you and to UNFPA, and thank you for invitation and opportunity to share with all of you experiences of the government of North Macedonia on this very important topic. Equality, or more specifically, gender equality, is one of the core principles of the government of North Macedonia, and the way of achieving it is by strengthening gender-responsive policies. Our legislation and policies are in service to enabling the private and the public sector to implement gender-responsive policies, and we are aware that these efforts benefit not only for women and parents, but all of society. They support more equal gender roles and norms by giving men the opportunity to take a larger role in family and household duties, and by supporting women to enter the labor force and thrive in their careers. The successful expanding of the choices needs to happen on several levels. On level of legislation and policy, at the private sector, and on the level of social norms. Very important level is the level of social norms. Facilitating gender-responsive family policies is a process we have already started in North Macedonia, and we can say that we are making significant progress in this direction. Firstly, with the legal environment, such as the law against discrimination from 2020, which covers the labor market discrimination, and the law on labor relations, which outlines measures to enhance gender equality at the workplace. Furthermore, by supporting the employers who invest in gender equality practices and gender equality policies. We are planning to strengthen this support by legislation on paternity leave with the new law on labor relations. The new law will provide for substantive parental leave, not depending on the leave taken by the mother. I, as a minister, expect that by the end of this year, the new law on labor relations will be adopted by the government and will put in procedure of the parliament. In the recent years, we have seen that this process intensified with the need of changes brought by the pandemic and the global economic crisis, as well as the dynamic labor market demands for qualified workforce. Unequal distribution of care work and the fact that 72% of unpaid labor is done by women is something we will change, but it will take a joint effort. Therefore, it's so important that employers recognize that women's care work and family-friendly policies are one way of addressing it. Here today with us is a representative from the employers' organization from North Macedonia, Belinda Nikolova. This organization, employers' organization, is our main social partner, and these issues are high on their agenda. In North Macedonia, only 10% of the workforce are in large and medium-sized companies who already have family-friendly policies. And our focus in next period will be the 19% of the workforce required by the small and micro enterprises. Therefore, through this network, we aim to impact a larger number of companies. The Ministry of Labor and Social Policy has taken firm steps to supporting the companies to introduce family-friendly policies. One of these is supporting companies to have daycare for the children of employees at their operations. We have a kindergarten at a textile company, and one was open in a public institution, the Ministry of Finance. Also, there is some examples, good policies and procedure of flexible working hours and remote work, as well as other benefits for employees. And this area will continue to strengthen. I will talk something briefly about sexism and gender discrimination in the workplace. And sexism and gender discrimination in the workplace are never to be taken lightly, because they are the indicator of gender equality and can be the basis for strengthening gender-responsive policies. The fact that discrimination is underreported is another area for joint effort of the public and the private sector. In North Macedonia, the first line in defense of discrimination are the Commission for Protection of Discrimination, the Labor Inspectorate, and also the Ombudsman. Our work lies on both sides, strengthening the knowledges, awareness, and capacities on the side of employees, and strengthening the system to recognize, prosecute, and penalize discrimination. We have established a resource center for gender-responsive policies and gender-responsive budgeting as a hub where we collect best practices and ensure continuous investment in gender equality. And really, we are very proud of this resource center. This is a unique resource center, and we aim for it to become a regional resource center in the future. And I would like to take this opportunity to thank Alia, to thank UN Women for all support to the government and the Ministry of Labor and Social Policy, generally to improve the situation with gender equality in our country, but especially thank you for support for opening and functioning of this resource center. Now is the time to push for gender-responsive policies, and we as government, we are supporting the private sector to implement them. And regarding the question of what I will bring back to my country following this rich discussion today, Actually, a lot. The examples of the other countries introduced and implement with the support from UNFPA have been most inspiring, very useful, I believe, for all of us who are participate on this conference. North Macedonia has a lot to offer and to learn. Therefore, we look forward to exchanging and joining efforts with other countries in the region. And let me emphasize that these initiatives come very timely for North Macedonia, as we are embarking on a very important process, development of a new strategy of demography. UNFPA expertise in developing a comprehensive strategic document that will encompass key demography issues that our region is facing is crucial. We must face the demographic challenges and find solutions that are applicable in the current context and are human rights based. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency. No doubt what is inspiring you, the passion and the richness of your address today shows how much North Macedonia does and is willing more to do. The way you have described the partnerships, the importance of partnerships, the importance of the social dialogue, the real challenges in terms of what has been done, that it's really capturing only 1/10 of the workforce in Macedonia, where the larger companies are actually introducing and implementing family-friendly policies, while the remaining 90% still need to be addressed. So we have them, but we need to expand to capture more of the population in the country. You also listed and said that there is still there is rich data, but about the unpaid work, care work, and it's pretty high, I assume everywhere. But now this takes me to our second panelist, our dear director of our dear sister agency, with whom we work at all levels very well. Could you please, dear Alia, just tell us a bit about the UN Women's recently conducted analysis on families and the role of women and gender inequalities in unpaid work care. Based on the evidence, your own analysis, the discussions today, and the regional context, what are your recommendations for future of the work on gender-responsive family policies? Please.
Thank you, Afrodita. Madam Minister, thank you for your remarks. And allow me to take this opportunity, first of all, to thank UNFPA and the Austrian Development Corporation for organizing this important meeting and putting such important topics on the agenda. And with that, to thank all the incredible panelists and moderators to this moment, because actually, as I was listening to you, what I was going to say kept changing. So I may not present a lot of the data that is in our report, because it's very clear, and as the Her Excellency the Minister has said, there's a wealth of data out there. But I think what resonated with me, and I think with many of you, is a recurring theme about this concept of thriving. And I think there is general consensus from what I've heard across the panels that for countries to thrive, people need to thrive. This is the essential concept. And when we think about people thriving, we associate it, or a lot of the conversations have been around those institutions and structures that are in place to support people. So that means we're talking about government, we are talking about civil society, we are even talking about private sector, and we are talking about family units. And it's actually the positive interaction and the collaboration between these different structures that is critical to achieve this concept of thriving people. Because it's only by bringing all the efforts together that this can happen and that we can actually implement those commitments. I don't think, when we think about this region in general, it's not so much on the commitment. It's really when it comes to the implementation of those commitments. How do we make it happen? So we really need this collaboration and cooperation and actually common space like this one to think through the complexity of the issues. If there was a simple solution, we wouldn't be here. This is what they would call a wicked problem. You fix one thing, another gets broken. So we really need to look at it as a complex issue. And we have to recognize that the world is changing and changing very rapidly. It has been doing so for a long time now. So we have to recognize also that families are changing and the roles of women and girls within them are also changing. So the policies, what we have in place have to adapt. If they are not adapting, you're not going to be able to ensure this concept of thriving. Not a thriving people, not thriving families, not thriving institutions, and definitely not thriving countries. And we also have to look, when we look through the lens of complexity, that families, yes, we can see them as institutions that can symbolize very positive things, cooperation, solidarity, and love. But these things can and they do coexist with less positive concepts, with conflict, inequality, and violence. So we cannot look at one without looking at the other. And there is no one single standard family form. I think this is from looking at all the work that UN Women has been doing in collaboration with other UN agencies. This is coming up again and again. So we have to make sure that for our laws and policies to support families and meet the needs of all the family members, they have to constantly be evolving and adapting. Even if we start with the idealized vision for what a family should be, and we have that as the starting point, and we align it with the global normative frameworks, and we imagine this home environment that embodies cooperation, that is nurturing, that is based on equality and justice, where everybody has voice and choice, where people can enjoy physical safety and economic security. We have to see it as our vision and our aspiration, but not a universal lived reality. Inequalities persist all over the world, with or without crisis. But as we know as well, it does get even more complex because when a crisis hits, whether it's a global pandemic or it's a disaster resulting from climate change or all-out war, families are the ones who are having to weather the storm. You've used beautiful images in the opening. It was very eloquently articulated to say, that even though everyone is weathering the storm, all families are weathering the storm, they're not in the same boat. And I would say that we also have to recognize that not everyone in the boat has a life jacket. So even within that structure, we have to look at those inequalities that exist. So gender-responsive family policies actually are an important tool and entry point for addressing inequalities, and as they manifest in households. You've heard a lot of the numbers. I'm not going to throw a lot of them at you, but just wanted to touch a few just to drive the issue home that, gender inequalities are very much alive and kicking. And not only that, they're kicking very hard, so we have to kick back equally hard. We have over 100 million women in the world who are raising children on their own. That's a massive number. By the end of this year, there will be 15 million more women and girls living in extreme poverty than male counterparts. We also know, when we're talking about demographic resilience, that demographic aging has a woman's face. We know that older women are more vulnerable to social, health, and economic disadvantages associated with aging, because over their lifetime they've experienced inequality and they have had to, over their lifetime, give priority to family obligations over work. And that's why we need, I heard this life cycle approach or lifespan approach, and I think it's really this lifetime, looking at issues over a lifetime will be very important. So family policies have to be as complex as the issues that they're trying to address. And with declining birth rates and more women opting out of marriage and motherhood, we're likely to see a growing number of older women living alone in need of long-term care, but without family members actually to provide it. And even if there are family members to provide it, many of you have said that it will be women and girls doing it, and they are bearing the disproportionate burden of this. And that's actually one of the reasons why we have one of the lowest female labor force participation rates. You know, despite the situation, only 45% of working age women are actually participating in the labor force because they are forced to make a choice, or is this really a choice? Because they have to burden this care. And even when they are participating in the formal labor force, they are not getting equal rights and they're not getting equal pay for work of equal value. So unless we address all of the issues holistically, we're not going to resolve the issue. And we know that COVID-19 made the situation even worse. 64 million women the world over, many of them working mothers, have left the formal labor force altogether. Unpaid work has increased and care gaps have deepened. So if the situation was bad before, it's even worse now. And when, as UN Women, we looked at how many governments have addressed the increased demands of unpaid care and domestic work in their COVID-19 response, we found that only 8% of all social and labor market measures even focused on the issue. So this has taken up so much of the conversation here today, but when it comes to government response, we're not seeing this matched with what there's a recognition of the problem, there's the political will to address it, there's a recognition that this is an important issue, but we're not really addressing it effectively. We only have 8 years till 2030. But if you look at the current rate of progress, it will actually take us 300 years to achieve the gender equality targets that are embodied in the Sustainable Development Goals. So I think we don't need change, we need fast transformation. And if you'll allow me, I will just touch on 4 elements, and they pick up many of the themes that have been raised in the other panels and have been brought up by the Minister. So these are 4 key elements. This doesn't cover everything, but just reflecting on everything that's been said. So what would be the takeaway? The first element is reform. We have to have egalitarian reform that is based on the highest normative standards to address discriminatory laws and policies that are depriving many women of opportunities and choices. I won't go into all the elements, you understand them really well. We've heard many good examples here today of concrete reforms that are happening in many countries of the region. This work must continue, must be supported, and must be scaled up. In response to the COVID-19 pandemic, the UN Secretary General has called for a new social contract and a new global deal that creates equal opportunities for all and respects the rights and freedoms of all. And this brings me to the second element. At UN Women, we built on the SG's concept and proposed a feminist social contract that addresses those vast deficits in state support and infrastructure for the care economy. So a feminist social contract is geared towards the achievement of substantive equality that recognizes the contributions and ensures rights for those who are sustaining the functioning of both markets and states, people in families and communities, and in particular focusing on women and girls. This new feminist social contract no longer reduces care to a commodity, a personal choice, or a family obligation. The aim is to stop what has been happening for millennia, this free riding on women's unpaid and underpaid labor. So it calls on all of us to assume and share the costs of quality care for all collectively. So this means, and this was why I wanted to pick up, and it was brought up by Her Excellency the Minister, in terms of gender-responsive budgeting. We need gender-responsive investments, financing, and budgeting. These dreams that we have, these aspirations, require investment. They require resources to make them happen. And they also require those monitoring and accountability mechanisms to make sure that we are on track. But we absolutely need to put the money where it is most needed. And according to this feminist social contract, the call is also aligned with what we are calling the fourth element of what I'm proposing here today, which is under partnerships. That we don't have global normative frameworks yet that cover the issue of care, unpaid care, care economy, and the like. But in the interim period, let's leverage what we have and call on partners to come together and figure it out together. And this is why an initiative like Generation Equality is so important, where many of you here today are familiar with it or are already strong partners in it, because we want to push the agenda forward. And under this, there are several mechanisms that are relevant to what we're talking about today. There is an action coalition on economic justice and rights, which is calling for an investment of 3 to 10% of national income towards the care economy. This is a very concrete ask. You also have the Action Coalition on Bodily Autonomy, Sexual and Reproductive Health and Rights, which is, has UNFPA and the government of North Macedonia as leaders that are tackling some of those tricky issues that have been covered on social norms and access to services. These mechanisms already exist. And there is also a global alliance on care, which is bringing governments together to learn from each other how to make these aspirations, these quite ambitious agendas a reality in the near future, not just in the long term. So there you have it. That's what I would say you need for transformation. You do need reform, you do need investment, you need feminist approaches, and you need partnerships. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, dear Alia. It's really difficult to summarize the very important things that you have said. But let me try just say that the vision you talked about, the short time that remains until 2030, and the need to move very fast and to transform rather than just act. The very small percentage of governments that are actually willing to, but actually implementing or working on gender or transformative policies. The family-friendly policies being the entry point, the complexity of the issue, the vulnerability, the changing environment, the different settings, and all those elements are very important to be taken into account for future actions. Thank you so much, and we'll continue together with all those that are strongly believe in this to improve, to make the world a better place for all. Now, I'm turning to my dear colleague, Gabriela, from UNFPA's regional office, the very valued gender advisor, to tell us a bit more about the challenges that have been listed by many speakers that are very much related or contribute to demographic challenges and to gender equality. And one of them is indeed family-friendly policies. Can you tell us a bit, please, how do they link to the 3 zeros of UNFPA's strategic plan for the next 5 years? Please, Gabriela.
Thank you, Zita. It's a shame that I have sort of, in big letters, I have here transformative. And it's exactly what Alia was saying. A shame or it means that it resonates with what is happening in the room. And because I think what the key word in our 3 transformative results is actually the word transformative. So in reality, the transformative results that UNFPA wants to achieve is to end maternal death, is to end unmet family planning, and to end gender-based violence and harmful practices. But what is at the core of these transformative results is actually a transformation of societies. And to transform societies, we know that we need to think about who are the most excluded and marginalized in this society. And therefore also UNFPA knows that without gender equality and the protection of women's and girls' rights, this is not going to be possible. And all of this makes us think, so in this transformation, what is the society that we want to create or we want to see? And as the UN, and this will resonate with Alia also, we have the idea that we want a society where human rights are protected and that are peaceful and are prosperous, and no one is marginalized or excluded, including women and girls. So how does that link then to the things that we're talking about today? It has to do with something that is at the core of what UNFPA doesn't think. It has to do with choices and opportunities. Because one of the, I never remember the exact phrase, but one of the the Cairo principles is that women and men have the number and the number of children and the spacing that they want. And that has to do with choices and opportunities at the core of what we think of what we're doing. But I will add a little bit on an extra cherry on the top of that. Because you don't only have to have the choices, you also need to act on these choices, having the environment that allows you to take that choice and run with it, which is what policies do. They allow people to, I think, I want this, and this is the opportunity that I can do this. So that's where we think about, policies, the work with governments, et cetera, et cetera. It also has to do with the long-term aspirations of people. And in what we're talking about today, I want to stress something that was briefly mentioned today, that it's not about having children or fertility, it's about becoming parents. But it's not only about becoming parents, it's about becoming mothers and fathers. And it's different. So we also want a world where motherhood is not an imperative, but it's also not prohibitive. So you have the choice to not be a mother or to have the number of children that you want, or you can, you can have the enabled environment to do that. And this is a very key discussion in this, because many times the social norms around motherhood are limiting women's choices and opportunities. We need to unpack that. We need to think about these things when we think about the families that we want. The other thing that I want to address is and it's my last point. It's working. Okay, so I forgot what I was going to say. No, I know. So when we think about the things, we need to be very realistic and very frank about the societies that we live in. And we need to think about what is holding women back. That is a reality of the societies we live in. And we know we have spoke a lot about what is holding women back, mainly the burden of unpaid care and domestic work, I will add. But I like a concept that I heard from feminist economists, that it has to do with the poverty of time. All women that have children know that they're poor in time. They don't have time because they have so many things to do. So this poverty of time is also a form of exclusion and discrimination. It's not only about, having the opportunities, it's also that, as Alia said, we're taking time from women because we are demanding that they do so many things, so they don't have time for themselves or to do the things they want. Finally, and this is actually my final point, the transformation that we're looking at is a profound social transformation that requires to think about the social norms around men and women, around parents and children, and also related to the older generations. So it's not an easy task, but it's a wonderful task, and we're starting to work around these issues right now. And with that, I want to end because I think we're on time. Thank you, Dita.
Thank you very much, Gabriela. Yes, so powerful messages that even the electricity went down. Yes. Although it's a last session, I saw that everybody was so attentive, meaning that we're tired maybe from the day, but we're energized to move on. And I will let the conclusions to actually the closing remarks to address that. But before we end, I'm just saying that as UNFPA, I'm so energized to go from here and move on with my colleagues and maybe attract more partners to support us in our work. So just maybe 1 more minute for each of the speakers, if you have any final words that would really stay in the audience's mind. Thank you.
Very briefly, from all discussion today, I see that many countries support gender equality and undertake intervention to improve the situation with gender equality in their countries. Still, I take this opportunity to call my colleagues from other countries, other governments, to continue their efforts in tailoring such policies together with social partners and to involve the social partners on the beginning of process of creating of such policies. Because only when sharing responsibilities at home goes hand in hand with family-friendly policies at workplace, only that we have a winning ticket. Thank you.
Excellent, the winning ticket. We have the formula for the winning ticket, and we have a call to other governments to continue their work or initiate their work for family-friendly policies. That is one of the contributors. Alia, please, a final word.
I think it's, not to say that what we're doing is not important. Keep doing it. Keep having the conversations. Involve others in the conversation. I think Madam Minister was talking about exchange between those who are actually doing it. I think this is super important. And the final thing is really just follow the money, because unless you're investing in something, it's not going to happen. So you really have to make sure that your aspirations are matched with investment. Thank you.
Absolutely. Money should follow all our plans, actions, strategies. Otherwise, they won't happen. It will be just a wish list. Thank you. Gabriela?
I hope I don't make the system fall again with my crazy ideas. No, I just want to also invite you all to be part of what UNFPA has started with this demographic resilience pathway and decade, I think we call it. I'm sorry, I forgot. Yes, the demographic resilience decade, because gender equality and gender responsive policies is a key part of the path that we're embarking on, with government, with the private sector, with UN agencies, with civil societies, and with all of us, with many other partners. Because no one can do it alone. We need partners, but no problem has only one solution. We need also to think very creatively and very holistically about how we address the big challenges and crises and transformation that our societies are living right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Gabriela. I would like to thank my panelists who are amazing. So just to remember the summary: partnerships, resources, but above all, will and trust in what we're doing, that we're actually doing something for the world to be a better place. Thank you.